Hey everyone, Dan here. We are after market close on Thursday, July 1st. We're going to take an updated look at Workhorse today. Before we get into it, if you enjoy these videos, please hit the like and subscribe button. It helps a lot. And also, there's a link to a Google form in the description below if you'd like to set your email up for a newsletter that I'm planning on sending out starting in a month or two. Once or twice a week newsletter with additional trade ideas, follow up on videos, tickers that we often cover, more stuff that I can get out in videos. It gives me another place to put some data and share some info. But again, nothing too hefty, once or twice a week, so I won't overload your inbox. So toss your email into the Google form, which is linked in the description below if that's interesting to you. And I'll let you know when it's ready to come out. All right, so Workhorse continues to get pummeled pretty heavily here. We did see this nice run up on the 28th. I think I have an idea of what some of that was. We can talk about that in a bit. But since then has been heavily brought down by shorts, which we'll also look at in a minute. But trying to fight around a bunch of these zones that we had plotted before. So I think that this chart is heavily intact still. I'm currently trying to bounce off this 1543 that we had charted long ago. Had to catch some of this cautionary zone support at 1511 today, as it dipped down there briefly, as it did also a few days ago. But can't seem to get sort of sustained support on any of these upper tier price targets. But again, that's a bunch of that is heavily because of or distorted by all of the short selling that's going on in Workhorse still, as they sort of continue to pile into already very, very hefty positions. Some may even call them over leveraged positions for Workhorse. Quick look at the indicators before we flip over to the data. Well into oversold territory for a bunch of the day today. Spent from about 11:30 onward, 11:30 to about 2:30. So 3 hours in oversold territory is pretty rough. And again, it's sort of one of those things that, these wild swings of this incredibly overbought positioning and then incredibly oversold positioning, a lot of manipulation happening, and we can talk about sort of why I think some of the hefty buys and sells are coming in when we take a look at the data in a minute. You see it did have a bunch of nice bullish momentum coming in to work itself out from under that previous down trend line that it had broken free of. Got past this topping out and settled in here, and then had a big push up, but then this is a long time to be spending 3 full days of bearish momentum, not a blip on the histogram of green. So no bullish pressure really coming in at all to try to sort of subside the bearish wave that Workhorse is trying to just kind of cope with at the moment. There could be winding down a little bit here, but we'll see. It wound down obviously there and then came back fast and furious with an even bigger bearish push after that. So we'll see what this winding down causes, but essentially it needs a big bullish cross here from the MACD over the signal line in order to get a big push up. All right, let's flip over to the data and have an updated look there. So the daily short volume ratio staying huge numbers recently, high 20s into the 30s. 30s is bonkers number, as I've said all along, super bananas. We do see that there was a bunch of peeling off in the days ahead of the 28th, and then a bunch piled in on the 28th. So what happened on the 28th was this huge run up here, and there was peeling off, like I said, in the days leading up to this. Now, let's flip over here. We'll sort of take a slight detour. You see, these are the fails to deliver from the first half of June. You see on June 6th, there were almost 2.5 million shares failed to deliver. Those become aged fails 30 days after the trade date. So 30 days after June 6th is going to be July 6th. If we look here, an aged fail is failure to settle a trade after 30 days, then results in charges by the SEC to cover counterparty risk, so fines and fees and that sort of thing. So what essentially happened here was folks bought, over, almost 2.5 million shares and sent the money to the person who was supposed to send them the shares, and those shares didn't ever come to them. Now, a portion of those were undoubtedly legitimate, and potentially a portion of those were because they were sold those shares naked. So naked short selling, buying of shares that were sold naked results in there's no share to deliver. So what happens then? Well, before July 6th, that person or that broker-dealer wants to go out on the open market, buy up however many shares they need to deliver, and then go ahead and deliver them then. So let's take a look at how this will play out. So on June 6th, if we can find that date, June 6th, they would have sold these shares right around, $13, $14, something like that. And then, they may have been looking for the price to come down, and that could be a bunch of this volume too, was the price to come down as low as they could manipulate it after a few run-ups. And as the price was coming down after shorting the stock heavily, buying up a bunch of shares in order to be able to deliver them. So buying them up in order to be able to deliver them ahead of the 6th of July. So they need to leave a few days for that transaction to settle so that they actually receive the shares that they bought, so that they're not being failed. They're not being failed to be delivered on to, however you would phrase that. But they're actually receiving the shares that they bought, which is what they failed to do for the person who bought their shares back on June 6th. And so, it's a little bit of a cat and mouse game, but, basically I think that is potentially what's driven some of these big bullish runs in the days leading up to July 6th. Now, being that it's already July 1st, I doubt that there's more buying pressure to come in to settle those deliveries on the day, which would be the first day that the market is open next week, because it's closed on Monday. So I think that those transactions are already done. So I don't think there will be additional buying pressure coming in order to fulfill those shares. So, and again, just to be clear, I'm not saying that this entire bull run or this entire run up or this entire run up were all because of that. I'm saying to the extent to which any of these were sold short naked, were nakedly sold short, and shares needed to be bought in the open market to deliver them, that could have played a big part in what happened there. So back to present day, on the short side of things, not really a fee to speak of. Availability of shares to borrow is very small, which we see supported here on the Ortex data. Current utilization is 94.9, which means, if it were 100%, all the shares available to borrow or lending program have in fact been lent. So nearly all shares available have been lent. That's another thing that can lead folks into some bad practices. Potential naked short selling is because they can't find the shares to be lent to them anywhere else. So they go ahead and just sell a share that doesn't exist, and then go back and worry later about having to purchase a share on the open market and deliver it to the person who bought that original share that they sold short. But Ortex estimating 37.28 of the short interest percentage of the free float currently, so very, very high, almost 40% of the free float being shorted. So shorts continuing to pile in. You see this blue line that rises here. That is the exchange reported short interest. So it's peeled down a little bit recently, but look how overextended it is. Coming down to 37% of the free floats, still, that's way disproportionate, way over leveraged. It's a crazy amount. So still very high shorting coming into play, obviously driving these down into good buy zones for hedge funds, institutions, what have you, and then some additional manipulation going on, in my opinion. All right, well, that'll do it for this one. I hope you all had a good week and that you close out the week strong tomorrow. I wish you the best of luck, and I will see you in the next video.